I didn't know I had ADHD until I got my son diagnosed when he was 5 years old. I was like, oh, this is how my brain works. This makes tons of sense to me. I've spoken in 60 countries. I did that one in Yorkshire. And then he said to me, by the way, can you do that again? But can you do it in India? I went and spoke in front of 600 people in India. As soon as I found out Oscar had ADHD, I decided to just go on a personal crusade to learn everything I could about it. I literally devoured about 17 books about ADHD, about kids with ADHD, and learn how his brain works so that I can communicate with him in a completely different way. So I'm also for like videos and podcasts, like Opus Clips is amazing. So that does snippets of your shows. You put the long form hour in and it comes up with like 30 of the most viral moments of a podcast, and it does it in seconds with captions all ready to go on social. And it's like, wow, that used to take podcasters and YouTubers like forever to edit. And can a PA do that for me? Can somebody else that does that as their specialization do it for me? I know that if I try and do an admin thing, it will take me forever, like way longer than someone that's like specialized in admin, because I will sit and procrastinate on it. I'll get distracted and it will take me 3 hours, but I can give it to my PA and she'll do it in 45 minutes and she'll do probably a much better job than me.
Hi, Sam. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for spending your time with me this morning. So, Sam, Queen of LinkedIn, social selling guru, also author, breast cancer survivor, and a mum of 3 neurodivergent children. How do you fit it all in?
Well, single mom as well, so I do it all on my own. So yeah, I'm a late diagnosed ADHDer. I didn't know I had ADHD until I got my son diagnosed when he was 5 years old. So I was like, oh, this is how my brain works. Like makes tons of sense to me. So yeah, all 3 children are ADHD. I also have a mixture of autism, Asperger's, OD, like mixed in with all of that. So yeah, there's 4 of us in the house and we all have ADHD. So it is fun, but a little chaotic at times.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I don't know how you keep up with it, but I'll be getting some tips from you later, how you manage it all anyway. Firstly, I just want to ask about your career, your professional career, and what you do as a social selling guru, Queen of LinkedIn. For those who haven't come across you yet, what does your work involve?
So I was quite an early adopter of LinkedIn. I was back in the day in 2005, I was in the recruitment industry, heard about this new networking platform called LinkedIn, which at the time was very heavily focused on recruitment. And I found the platform, started using it for finding candidates for jobs. And then I moved to Ireland in 2005. I knew nobody there and I set up a business. And I thought, I wonder if I can use this LinkedIn thing to actually get clients. So I started learning how to use it to get customers and to network to get business, and built that recruitment company quite successfully, landed Amazon as a client, basically smashed it in a country where I didn't know anyone. And it was all done through networking online and offline. And in 2010, I was asked to share my story about how I grew that business on stage. And I'd never spoken before. I'd never been in front of an audience. And I said to the person that invited me to this event, like, how many people are going to be there? And he was like, oh, about 200. And I literally froze. I was like, oh my goodness, I've never stepped in front of that many people before. So I got up on that stage, shared my story, and I got a standing ovation. Like, and it was just the most magical thing, like one of the best moments of my life. I was like, the whole room erupted, stood on their feet for me. And I was like, whoa, this is cool. And I was kind of getting bored of recruitment at that point. And I thought, oh, maybe I could. I started looking into like, was anyone else out there really kind of talking about this? And I found a handful of people, but I would describe the people as pale, male, and stale. That there were like 5 people back then talking about LinkedIn. And I was like, oh, there's no girls talking about it. So I thought, I know that's what I want to be. So I set my sights on becoming like a dominant force in speaking about LinkedIn. And that's what I did. So it was kind of like a part-time gig to begin with. Lived in various other countries, Holland, Scotland, Poland, and then came back to the UK. And that's when I decided I was going to put my flag in LinkedIn and decide to dominate the platform. So yeah, that's what I did.
Amazing. So sounds like you've been all over the world doing what you
Yeah,
do.
I have.
That's
Well,
amazing.
I've spoken in 60 countries. So I did that one in Yorkshire. And then he said to me, by the way, can you do that again? But can you do it in India? So I went and spoke in front of 600 people in India. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I get paid to travel the world and speak in front of audiences. I was like, this is a very cool lifestyle. So Yeah, so pre-COVID, I was probably 50% of my time I was away from home, speaking, traveling. Then I started getting into Sales Navigator, and a lot of corporate clients came along. So I worked with companies like Brother, Mastercard, FedEx, like really big companies, brand names that everyone would know. So I've kind of moved into this space now where I'm quite well known for corporate training, and big companies hire me to train their sales and marketing teams. So that's kind of where I spend most of my time now, although not so much travel since COVID, unfortunately.
Speaking of the big businesses you work with, you've also worked with Activision and Blizzard as well, haven't you?
I have, yes. Yeah.
It's estimated in the UK that 18% of people that work in the gaming industry are obviously neurodiverse. Was there anything that particularly stood out for you in that experience?
Well, that is new information to me about the gaming industry, but I guess it makes sense in terms of the types of people that might gravitate towards that industry. I know, like for my son, for example, he's a big gamer. He's got Asperger's, ADHD, and ODD. So, like, he pretty much like became a top 1% Fortnite player, like really, really early on, because in lockdown, like that's all he did. He never went to school. He basically like played games all the time. So that would kind of correlate with his, his trajectory, I should say. But yeah, it would make sense. I mean, I didn't work with them for a really long period of time, and I primarily worked with a lot of the leaders rather than the people that were developing the games. So I was in there working with a lot of the senior female leadership, and kind of they have like a program in there to help like different groups of people. So they have different programs for different diversity initiatives. So I worked a lot with the senior female leadership, but I wouldn't have worked with everyone. So I can't make a sweeping statement about
Yeah.
whether or not that's true, but it would make sense to me that that was certainly a high percentage within that industry for sure.
Yeah, because generally within a creative industry, there tends to be kind of more neurodiverse businesses. Is that what you found with the businesses that you've worked with?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if I take my own, I've got two girls and a son, and my two girls are basically super creative. One is currently studying at college, doing painting and decorating. Her ADHD comes with dyslexia, so she's not particularly academic, but she is super creative and she wants to go into design and property renovation and things like that. So she's definitely taken that path. And my youngest is 13, and she's already, she's an artist. She's already saying like art's my favorite subject. I want to be an artist. I want to be a photographer. I want to be a creative person. So I think it just makes sense that our brains are kind of wired in a way that creativity and big thinking and ideas and those kind of things kind of match, because I think with all the people I speak to that have ADHD really struggled in school because they were misunderstood by their teachers, for they got branded a certain way. I know my son was, I think he had 76 detentions in like a year or something crazy. And he was completely misunderstood. He was super bright. He was very bored because he was so bright. And if someone had just nurtured that brain of his and grabbed hold of him, I think it would have been a very different outcome. But now he's an entrepreneur and doing his thing, and he's hyper focused on AI and he's doing awesome stuff. So yeah, I think it does make sense that a lot of people in the creative industry would go into something creative because they just didn't find their feet in the school system.
Yeah. How did you find it yourself when you was at school? It's been a little while ago, myself, what, 20,
Oh
20
yeah,
years
about 2 years
since at
ago, John.
school.
2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, of course you was at school much more
Yeah,
recent than
yeah,
I
yeah.
was,
I
but
mean, the I was the perfectionist slash goody two shoes slash A grade student that was masking her way all the way through school. So I had a very high expectation on me from my father, and I was like the brains, and I was the one that was expected to do well in school, get a good, go to university, get a good job. I had a lot of expectation on my shoulders. So I did play I was a prefect. I was like the most goody two shoes child in school you can possibly imagine. I look at it now and I'm like, I clearly was masking my way all the way through school, um, just trying to kind of shadow the fact that I had this chaos going on in my head. But
yeah.
I didn't know I had ADHD. My parents didn't pick it up. It wasn't a thing. I think with girls, it gets misdiagnosed or doesn't even get picked up until later in life because we cover things up in a certain way, and the way that our brains are wired and the chemical imbalances are different, I think, to how it shows up sometimes
Yeah.
in boys. So we don't show up necessarily as the like fidgety, like hyperactive, can't sit still kind of person. We show up in a different way. So, and that's quite, again, a sweeping statement, but that's from the research I've done, having now got two girls with ADHD. One I've only just realized has it. And I'm like, how did I miss this? But she's obviously been masking as well and been presenting in a different way. So yeah, it's one of those, I think. I mean, my dad's now like, how do we not? My mum and dad are just like, how do we not see this? And but when we go to their house and stay with them, like obviously it's complete chaos. We've got wardrobes everywhere. You know, we're very messy, very disorganized. And it took them a few years to kind of understand like why we like that. But now they get it, and now they're like, "Oh, okay, this makes tons of sense why you operate like this." So I have had to do quite a lot of education of the people around us. So my sisters, their family, my parents, like when we do get together, which is not that often because they live far away, as in very far abroad. But when we do get together, it's like we have to kind of almost explain ourselves a little bit because the way that we are and the way that we show up and the way that we are never on time for things with time blindness, we're messy, we're chaotic, like, we know where everything is, but obviously it's just like a
Yeah, there's a organisation within the chaos, isn't there?
exactly.
But
Organized chaos, yeah, exactly. So I think there's a lot of education to do with the people around you when you have ADHD or you have children with ADHD, because sometimes grandparents and, you know, extended family don't kind of get it, and they don't understand why you are the way you are, and why can't you just, you know, why can't you just clean up after yourself? My kids don't even see the mess. I don't see the mess. So it's like, I think there's some work to do around how we present and how we show up and why we are the way we are, you know?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, I've found that myself when I was kind of first diagnosed and speaking to my own father about it, who he was like, "Well, how did you ever like how was you ever aware?" And I was kind of like, "How are you never aware?" But yeah, no, I definitely, obviously, I think there's a part of it which is genetics, and my mum, who's no longer around, unfortunately, that is definitely the side that it came from, because she was always working like 3 jobs, single mum, like, always, you know, always busy. Like, if she wasn't doing the 3 jobs, she'd be cleaning the house and, like, constantly nonstop. So, yeah, when I got my diagnosis, she'd already passed by then, but it was a very sort of, um, heartwarming moment that, like,
Yeah.
knowing what where, you know, the kind of journey that she'd been on, but completely unaware. So, and it would have been nice to have that chat with her, and, you know,
Yeah, of
but,
course. So do.
anyway, before I get emotional, what is it like, obviously being a neurodivergent parent yourself, having 3 neurodivergent children, do you find that you have to kind of adapt your parenting style at all to
Yeah,
suit them a little
it's
bit
a great
more?
question. It's a really interesting point you make, actually, because I mentioned I'm a single mom, and I think one of the reasons I am is because I had very different parenting style to my ex-partner or ex-husband. It's not the only reason we're not together, but it is part of it, honestly, because he came from a very culturally, his family were from kind of South America, and the way that he was disciplined in South America and in his culture was very much like, you know, not how we do things in the UK. And I was like, as soon as I found out Oscar had ADHD, I decided to just go on a personal crusade to learn everything I could about it. I literally devoured about 17 books about ADHD, about kids with ADHD, and kind of learn how his brain works so that I can communicate with him in a completely different way. So nutrition has a lot to do with it. I didn't know that how traumatic their birth is has a big bearing on how severe their symptoms are, for example. So Oscar had a particularly traumatic birth, or I had a particularly traumatic birth with Oscar. And I went to see a specialist chiropractor who specializes in ADHD. And they went back to like, you know, his time in the womb, how he was born, what trauma he had when he came out, all of that stuff. And that's all related. And they did a lot of work with him in terms of the chiropractic side of things and spinal alignment. Then they educated me on nutrition and things like taking gluten out the diet, I can't even speak, taking gluten out, taking lactose out, taking not sugar, but some of the things that trigger certain things. So we went and did kind of a whole piece around the nutritional aspect of things. The biggest thing for me as a parent was really in the way that I understood how the kids' brains actually work. So communicating with them when they've done something wrong, or communicating with them when they are doing something risky, or when they are, you know, just being kids. I chose to communicate in a very different way. So I wouldn't get upset or shout, because I think they just at the point when you would typically might shout at someone, or you might kind of get a bit raised voice with a child because they're doing something that is like not what you want them to do.
Yeah.
That's the time to really like bring it down and just be really calm with them, because their nervous system is just not hearing you. So I think the way that you parent and the way that you communicate with the child is really, really important. So I really educated myself on how does this child's brain work. I mean, he also has Asperger's as well, which comes with its own challenges, as well as ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder. So I got a lot of physical abuse when he was much younger, and I got a lot of emotional abuse later on. So for me learning, but I know that a lot of that was not his fault. So I think a lot of the time some behaviors can show up in children that have neurodiversity, that if you're not fully aware of why they're showing up in that way and why they are doing the things they're doing, it can be frustrating, especially if you're a neurotypical parent, and but even more so if you are also neurodivergent as well. So I think the biggest thing that I found that helped as a parent was putting structures and routines in place for them, because I found that there would be meltdowns or there would be challenges when things didn't go to plan. So if there was a last minute change to something, so if we were supposed to be leaving at 4 o'clock and going somewhere, and then the plan changed last minute, and maybe we were leaving later, or we were going a different way, or I'd always notice that there would be some kind of like reaction to that. So I try and keep the systems and routines like Groundhog Day every day. So, you know, the movie Groundhog Day, where he wakes up and the alarm goes off and it's exactly the same day repeated over and over. If there's any change to routine, particularly for my youngest, it really affects her. So we have everything on like a chart. We have Monday through to Sunday written out. We have all of the things that she needs to tick off, like she'll forget to brush her teeth, or she'll forget to have a shower, or, you know, things like that, just basic like human needs. So she now has a really structured routine. It's stuck up in her room. She knows exactly what she needs to do. She uses her Alexa to remind her of things. So it's just about like putting structures in place and putting reminders in place for all the things that they need to do to just function in the normal day. Whereas most kids would be like, you know, they just get up, they do their thing, they go to school. But just the whole morning routine before school is like a military operation to get 3 neurodivergent kids out of bed, up, ready, like packed. And we always have to arrange to leave the house at least 20 minutes before we should leave the house, because there's always someone that's forgotten something,
Yeah.
or there's someone like, "Oh, no, we have to go
Keys still
back
in the
and I've
door
got
or
this." In and out the door, I'm like, "I can't find my keys," because I'm got it as well. So I'm like, "I can't find the keys." One kid's like, "Oh, I've forgotten this homework book. Oh my goodness, I need to go back in for this." So we're suddenly like, it just takes forever to leave the house to do anything. And the other thing that drives me crazy is that they just lose stuff all the time. But it's just one of those things. It's like the ADHD tax, right? So I think Liliana had this term, she's in year 8. She's lost 17 water bottles, 6 blazers, and 5 PE kits so far. And we're only in December, and she started school in September. So that is a lot of stuff to replace. And I literally label everything. I send her home with everything. You know, her calculators go missing, her stationery goes missing, her pens go missing. So I think now that she's in secondary school and she's not in one classroom, obviously they move around each time. She just moves, and then she forgets that something's on her chair or something's on the table. So she'll just move around the school and like come out of school, and I'm like, "Where's this?" She's like, "Oh, I lost it." So that's quite challenging, because obviously you have to keep replacing that. And sometimes it shows up and sometimes it doesn't. So it just, I think it's, I think it's just accepting that that's how they are, and being at peace with that, and not getting cross about stuff like that, because they literally can't do anything about it. Like, it's just the way that they are. And there's no point in getting frustrated with them, or, I mean, there are things you can do to put, to, like, for example, her PE kit now stays in school and her teacher keeps it under the desk, because I keep saying to her, like, I can't keep replacing the trainers and the PE kit like every 2 weeks. So now she has it in school, and the teacher reminds her to give it to her at the end of lesson. And that's kind of something we put in place. But I think it's a lot to do with how you communicate with the school, particularly as a parent, because they have so many different kids that are neurodiverse, and probably a lot more that are maybe even worse than your children are. So I really push hard with the SEN team to put the right things in place to make them as comfortable as possible through the process. And I think it really takes a lot of effort on the parent's part to champion your child, and to have those conversations with teachers and with the SEND team, because if you don't advocate for your child, they'll just get lost and they'll get missed and they'll not have the right things in place.
Yeah, and it's a really, I think it's a really good point, and what you've done in terms of, like, having those discussions with the school as well. You know, the education system and school system is generally notorious for being set up as, like, for the neurotypical brain. And, you know, from my own experiences and guests that I have on the show, people I speak to, like, school is a challenging time for any child anyway. But then with adding a neurodiverse flair to that, and it becomes really difficult to navigate. So, have you found it quite a battle then with the school to get the support for your children?
Bear in mind, my kids have been in school in 4 different countries up until this point, right? So I've had different experiences in different places. So when we were in Ireland, Oscar was 4 or 5 years old. He had a very old school teacher in a very, very, very small rural, like, village type place, and I knew that there was something going on with him, and I just had, like, my spidey senses like, I need to, like, figure out what's going on with him, because the teacher would come out every day and she'd call me forward like this she was in her 60s, she'd, like, call me forward like this, and I'd have to go up in front of all the parents, and she'd be like, "Your child's a monster, he did this today." And I'm like, "My child is not a monster, like, come on now." And she said to me things like, "Oh, I kept him in, at break time because he was naughty." And he wasn't being able to get his energy out, which is what he really needed to do. She needed to send him outside to go burn off all his energy, and what she was doing was keeping him inside as a punishment for something he might have done. So I knew that my child was not a monster, which is what she described him as. So that's at the point when I went to a psychologist, and I got him diagnosed. He was diagnosed, he's basically high functioning autistic. So he's got the Asperger's, ADHD, and ODD as well. But as soon as he moves class and he went to the next level up in the next year, he got this amazing, much younger teacher, but she was educated and trained in her teacher training on how to deal with neurodivergent kids. So she would give him all the jobs in the classroom that meant he had to get up all the time. So he would be given the job of, like, dishing out the books to everyone. So every time he needed to do a job, it was him out of his seat. He got the chance to move around. And, and the difference between the first year and the second year, even in the same school, it's a lot to do with how the teacher is educated as well, I think. And he had a completely different experience in the second year in that school than he did the first one. But when I got to get him diagnosed, even though that teacher that was, like, telling me all the time he was a monster, she was very old school. And when I got her to do the questionnaire to give the teacher's feedback on how he was in school, she just explained that he was, like, there was nothing wrong with him. And I think it was because she was against medication, or she thought he might be going, like, if she said stuff about him that, he might be put on meds or something like that. But she literally wrote down everything and said there was nothing wrong with him. So we had to go for a second opinion because the teacher wasn't backing up the fact that he, obviously was, in her words, a monster and was always doing naughty stuff. So I don't know. So that was not a great experience, but at least we got the diagnosis. For me, and the hardest thing is in secondary school. So I think the primary schools are pretty well set up for it. They have good support, but the secondary schools, because there's so many kids, like, they're dealing with 1,300 children, and they've only got a very small SEN department in most schools, in most mainstream schools. I mean, I think Oscar was probably picked up quite late in terms of the support for him, but they did all have extra time in the GCSEs. They've had extra support and things like that, but I've had to really advocate for Liliana, who's my youngest. I mean, I went in last week for an hour meeting with them because every time they change a year, or every time they have new teachers, they don't listen, or they don't look at the stuff, and they don't go through the information. So they put her in situations that she's not comfortable with. So she cannot be and have anyone in her personal space within about 2 meters. So in school, obviously, she's in squashed places. She's trying to, they're forcing her to sit next to people in the classroom. She literally does not function. She shuts down, dysregulates if she's put in a position where I mean, I'm her mum and she does not hug me. Like, I don't have any physical touch with her at all. So that's really hard, because in school, she has to be in situations where she is, in close
Close
proximity to other
proximity, yeah.
people. Like, she won't go in a car if she's got to sit in 3 seats where there are 3 people next to her. She goes in a separate car because she can't tolerate, like, being in that kind of close proximity. So just explaining that to teachers and trying to get them to understand that, like, and how she focuses in class is through drawing. So if she's listening and she's focused on the lesson, she's drawing in a notepad. But the teachers think that that is her
Typically not
not
allowed, isn't it?
listening.
And not paying
Exactly.
attention, yeah.
And she's like, no, no, no. Like, if I'm drawing in my book, I'm paying attention to the teacher. They need to worry when I'm not drawing in the book. So just trying to explain to them that, like, you need to let her draw. You need to let her play with post-it notes. You need to let her play with blue tack. You need to let her have the sensory toys that she needs. But a lot of the time she gets them taken away. And I'm like, you can't take them away from her. Like, she's actually needs them. So I think it's just education, as in we as parents have to really advocate, and we shouldn't have to do it. But I'd say if you're listening to this and you're frustrated with the school around how they're handling your child, like, just go in, book a meeting with them, and just explain it, because I hear all the stuff about her meltdowns and all the stuff that she's had challenges in class, and it never gets back. It never gets back to the SEN team. The teachers don't communicate it back to the SEN team that this happened today, probably because they don't want to get themselves in trouble. But she's had at least 7 meltdowns and a couple of panic attacks in school since September, and I'm like, that can't continue. That's not fair on her. So I just am very bullish about handling the school, and I think any parent listening to this needs to do that. You need to advocate for your child because you know them better than anyone else.
It's quite ironic in the fact that, it's the education system that needs educating, isn't
Yeah.
it? It just sounds like there's some positive changes
Yeah.
when I was back at school where there's
Yeah.
no awareness of, neurodiversity. It's like still frustrating to hear that from you still constantly having to fight that battle. I know there's changes going on now in terms of educating them more on business and finances and things like that to prepare them for adulthood. But really, I think there's so much work that needs to be done from a neurodiverse point of view as well.
Definitely. I mean, the whole system needs reforming. I think the fact that it takes you up to 3 years to get diagnosed, like, the waiting lists are crazy. I mean, I've paid because I've paid to get my kids fast tracked, because I'm not going to wait 3 years to get a diagnosis that allows my child to get support. And obviously, I'm in a position to be able to do that, but not every parent is. But there are, I would say, just educate yourself, because there are different routes to getting a faster diagnosis. I've learned a lot from people that talk about it on TikTok, for example. So if there are lots of people out there that talk about how to get support for your children and how to fast track diagnosis and things like that. So don't just accept that it's a 2.5 year wait list. Like, go and educate yourself, go and find people that know the system. And there are other routes available. It doesn't have to cost the earth, but and there are a lot of companies out there that do payment plans and things like that. So if you are like, I need to get this done, I wanted to get Liliana's done before she started secondary school, because I wanted her to go there with a plan and with being registered with SEN. But I knew that if I went through the normal system, it would be probably year 9 before she even got a diagnosis. So I already knew that she had it. I just hadn't got the formal diagnosis. And then she's now being diagnosed with autism as well. So that's, and then again, another process as well. You've got all that kind of to battle. It's really hard, to advocate, but I think it's awful that we have such long wait lists now for both adult and child, diagnosis of neurodiversities.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear, like, from the point of view of putting your child through that diagnosis as well, and the difficulties of that, because I've experienced and a lot of people that I speak to on the show experience issues with the system and how it's set up, and even things like so when I finally got referred, there's right to choose in place with the NHS because you get the right to choose your provider. However, when I was referred, they just automatically referred me to a provider that I didn't choose. Like you said, educating yourself is a really powerful tool, especially with, obviously, there's a lot of information on ADHD UK, which is where I kind of found my provider with a diagnosis eventually. Yeah, yeah, definitely echo that in terms of educating yourself without, not just relying on the system
Yeah.
to do the work, because
Yeah, definitely. And AI is great for that as well. So you can get some deep research done about how, like that process, and get help with writing the letters in the right way and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, really do back yourself, because it is one of those things that, like, if you get that support, if you get that diagnosis, then you can put mechanisms in place. It can get recognized. And, I think even if you're listening to this and you think you might have it and you're not diagnosed, like, definitely go get that diagnosis done if you can, because it does allow you, access to certain things. Like, there's different things, even as a self-employed person or as a business owner, that are in place for people with neurodiversity, that, there's grants available that a lot of people don't know that are available if you have that diagnosis as well. So Access to Work is a program that allows you to put things in place and have grants in place for things that are going to make your life easier if you have ADHD. So there's programs like that that are available. So again, which are available both to employees and self-employed people, but a lot of self-employed people don't know that that exists for them. But you do need to have that diagnosis in order to access to work, for example. And it's not the best program in the world. It does take time to get processed and things, but you can't get it unless you have that diagnosis. So you can't just go, I think I might have it. I think I'm a bit ADHD. Like, no, you need to know. And then there are resources available to you that you can access in order to be able to get help that you need.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sam, and hopefully that helps a lot of parents out there and businesses that don't know those grants are available, because speaking to business owners quite regularly, it's amazing the amount of people that just aren't aware of it. So talking about your children as well, I met Oscar at, when we met at hashtag events,
Yeah.
and you've done an incredible job as a mother, because he's such a polite lad, and yeah, just very friendly. So congrats to you on raising him really well, first of
It
all.
took some challenging years to get there, but we're through the other side now.
And when we met, you was obviously speaking at the event, and it was clear like how proud you are of him and the journey that he's been on himself.
Yeah.
And he's just starting his entrepreneurial journey as well, isn't he?
Yes, yeah, definitely. He's in Sydney right now, actually. So we're recording this in December of 2025. So he's over in Sydney right now. He is like really delving into AI. He's really learning a lot about AI and automation. He's an entrepreneur. He is going to be working with a very established founder of a business next year when he gets back from Australia. And he is smashing it. Like, he's doing such a great job. And he hates me saying I'm proud of him. Like, he's like, don't ever say that on my LinkedIn post, mum. So I have to be very non-mummy on my on my responses to his social media. So if you ever see me not saying I'm super proud of you, it's because I'm being told not to say it. But obviously I am very proud of him. But yeah, we did have our ups and downs. Like, I probably had the most challenges with him in his teenage years. So for those parents listening that haven't quite hit the teenage years with neurodiversity, there's a lot coming your way, just to warn you. But yeah, we had a couple of challenging years where we just weren't getting each other and we were clashing a lot. And I think when you layer on all the hormones of, just puberty and everything else, that it's already hard enough to go through puberty and trying to establish who you are. But when you're doing it, when you're neurodiverse and you've got all those additional challenges on top of that, I think for me, the biggest thing with the kids is just letting them know that their neurodiversity is not a bad thing, that it's actually their superpower and it's like a gift. And I think that is always been I know he's going to change the world. I know he's going to do amazing things. Like, I've said that since he was 5 years old, and he's only just now starting to believe it. But he's like, Mum, you've said that to me for so long. He's like, now I see it. Now I understand my path and now I understand where I'm going. And I think it's just not seeing it as something that's going to hold you back, and giving them really solid, inspirational people to look up to that also have ADHD, that are also smashing it in their career despite having those things. So I point him to very successful multimillionaires and billionaires even that are neurodiverse and have, some of the challenges he has. But those people have got there because they were probably told in school, you're never going to make anything of yourself. You are, you're lazy, you're this, you don't pay attention. A lot of these people that go out and smash it are usually the people that had problems in school because of their neurodiversity. So in spite of that, they go out and, and do amazing things. So I've I know he's special, and of course I'm going to say that about his mum, but when he was 5 years old, we would play darts on a dartboard, and he would be adding up like triple 17 plus 50, plus whatever, like the three darts, whatever he got, and I'd be like doing it in my head and be trying to work out what it was, and he was 5 years old and telling me a 5 year old should be doing 1 + 1 = 2, and he was doing sums and calculations that that a 5 year old should not be doing. And I remember as part of his ADHD assessment, he got an IQ test. And the psychologist, who'd been a psychologist for about 20 years, she asked him, like, name 3 animals. And a 5-year-old, what do you think a 5-year-old might say to name 3 animals?
Maybe like a cat, dog, and
A cat,
sheep.
dog, and a sheep or something, right? And he lived in Ireland, so he saw them all the time. He was like a capybara, like he just named these like animals, and she's like, "What even is that?" And she said to me, in 20 years of doing assessments and working with kids, she said, "I've never met a child with a higher IQ than Oscar at age 5." And he was like in the 95th percentile, which means he's in the top 5% of IQ. And he was 5 years old. And even when he was in secondary school, his one of his teachers in the SEN team, they did a test on him in year 11 and just before his GCSEs. And the guy said, I've not met a child with a brain processing speed as quick as yours. So unfortunately, it never got picked up, of course, and it never got nurtured. But, he's super, super intelligent. So it doesn't always mean that it's a bad thing. So any parent listening to this that thinks, oh, it's bad that my child, not bad, but like they're going to have challenges. Yes, they're going to have challenges, but there are ways to make that a superpower for them and get them to believing that actually that is my gift. That is why I'm so good at this. So he might be very nocturnal and he might have some stretches where he's hyper focused, like for 30 something hours on something, but that's him learning and focusing in on something he's super interested in. And I'm the same. Like if I'm really interested in a topic, I can go down a rabbit hole and be hyper focused on that one thing. So a lot of people think, oh, they don't pay attention and have got no focus. But actually, on something they're really interested in, they will 100% be laser focused in on that thing. Liliana will draw for 8 hours straight on her iPad on doing digital artwork, and it will be the most unbelievable piece of art. And she's done it for 8 hours straight and she's not come off of it. And that's what regulates her. Whereas most people will be like, oh, don't give her that much screen time. But like, I know that she's creating something beautiful and magical and she wants to be an artist. So I'm going to nurture that talent and I'm not going to stop her from doing that. So I think it's just for them, it's about self belief and understanding that that is a gift and that their gift can be used for great things. And that's, I think, your role as a parent is to nurture those talents and figure out what they are good at and give them every space possible to just go and explore that talent.
I absolutely love like hearing that because with neurodiversity as well, there's a correlation between like neurodiversity, mental health conditions like depression and things like that, and generally low self-esteem. So bigging your children up like that and giving them the confidence and belief that they can do anything and encouraging that creativity is amazing. And like you say, there's so much talk about screen time now and how much is acceptable and how is not, like should kids own phones and things like that. Like, the fact that you're understanding the reason why and like the purpose that she's using the technology for is to express that creative side and it's not just like doom scrolling on TikTok. I think that's a really powerful point as a parent. And if well, hopefully that's giving parents that may be listening a bit of clarity on whether they think their kids using technology screens too much and maybe think about how they use it as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're more prone to dopamine hits, right? So that, I do have one that does like doom scroll TikTok, unfortunately, but I also know that she's super creative and, she doesn't do it all the time, but she does have that. She's in that phase at the moment. She's 16. So she's like very much about that at the moment. But I think because she's doing something with super creative with college, I know that she's not doing that all day long in school, for example, or in college. Like she's painting, she's, exploring her creative side and things like that. And she's already said, like, I want to set up my own painting company. Like, so we're already like creating her brand and doing all of that stuff. And we're using AI to help us do that. So, she's learning how to do that. And her energy will go into that as soon as she's like qualified to be able to do that for people. So I think it's just understanding each child is different. And just because someone's neurodiverse, we're all very different. There's so many different layers of spectrum. And I think also ADHD can sometimes come with other things that maybe some parents are just not aware of. So I didn't know that ODD was a thing. And it's quite common to have it with ADHD and oppositional defiance disorder, which is ODD. I didn't know that that was a thing and how closely linked it can be, particularly in boys with ADHD. And until it was brought to my attention, I was like, oh, this makes tons of sense why he's, really defiant against authority and particularly a parent, usually aimed at one parent. And in that case, it was me, not his dad. And why he was so defiant against some of his teachers in some lessons because he didn't respect them, because he didn't see them as having a high enough intelligence to be teaching him. So he would ask very challenging, not challenging questions, but questions that most kids wouldn't ask on a subject about something. He loved philosophy, he loved debate, he loved learning about different things. So he would put a different perspective and ask a challenging question to the teacher, and he would be shut down and sent out the room because he was being disrespectful. And he wasn't at all. It was just that his brain was like trying to understand the subject and asking something that maybe the teacher couldn't answer. So instead of saying, "Oh, I don't know the answer to that, I'll come back to you," they just were like, "Oh, like, don't be so this," and then like, "Oh, out the room,"